Howdy there, folks and UCCNC users. Today I've got a short video to give kind of a demo of ProbeIt for UCNC. Been working at it a little while. It's coming along. It's still got some glitches, but it's somewhat functional, so I thought I'd show where it's at currently. If anybody is familiar with ProbeIt for Mach 3, I've tried to port most of the functionality over to UCNC, and then I'll keep adding to it in this program. So just looking at the tabs, there's a 2D probing tab. This is the bulk of what ProbeIt for Mach 3 used to be ported over. There's basic probing in 2D, which has, bore, posts, sides and edges, corners. When you do a side, you can select between an edge mode and how far along the edge to probe. There's diameter mode, so when you do a bore, instead of just doing, X, Y probes, you can tell it how many points to take around the diameter of the circle. And you've got zeroing mode for setting up axes and centering things. It's basic setup functionality. There's a tab for G68 rotation, where you can automatically have the coordinate system rotated in UCNC. It basically does an edge hit, and then it comes back and does a corner hit so that you can set center of rotation about the corner and zero it if you wish. And that tab is in process. Perimeter probing, that is traveling around an object and recording, I'll say, the perimeter to a file. It'll record a DXF, CSV, and a perimeter file for use in another chunk of this plugin that I'm still working on. Over here, you've got basic view of the axis DROs. You've got Z-axis controls. You can set a surface and then have the plugin automatically raise and lower. And I'll demonstrate that shortly. And you can tell it how far to automatically clear and go to depth. So if you know the diameter of your ball, you can always tell it to go, the diameter of your ball or half the diameter or a little bit more, depending on your part shape and if it's got chamfers or not to worry about. You got jogging functionality built in. Of course, you have to turn on the speed, and then you can jog from within the plugin. And then I'll just keep toggling through to just give an overview of the program quick here. Surface and grid probing. I had put out a plugin called ProbeCloud a while ago. I'm trying to roll that in and connect it up with ProbeIt so that you can take a 2D profile of a trace and then map out, basically for doing a bed of nails type 3D surface scan within contained perimeters. That's still in process a little bit. Probe setup page, you've got a calibration table. What this does is, if you've got a ring gauge, such as this here, I always use a similar ring gauge of a known diameter. You put in the diameter of the ID, and it'll go around and probe the ID every 10-degree increments and basically build a calibration table of adjusted ball tip diameters, which takes into account all your axis, backlash, probe trip deflection distances, and all the stuff that causes error. There's an email setup tab just carried over from the ProbeCloud plugin. I'll be enabling that as I get it working. And then obviously there's an About tab where licensing information will be entered. So let's give a quick demo. Over here I've got a view kind of zoomed in looking at the tip of my probe. And I'm jogging around manually using an Xbox controller. So what I'll do is I'm going to tell it I want to set the top of this piece as 0, tell it to touch. And so now it's set the surface of the part at z equals 0, and it's using this 0.3 as the clearance and 0.05 as the depth it'll go to. So if I just jog inside of here, if I say move down, it'll move down. It's now within the bore. I can tell it to go up. With auto raise and lower checked, then what will happen is I don't have to automatically put it down. I can jog around my part, get over the top of a bore, and just tell it, okay, let's do the ID of a bore. It'll automatically lower. And it'll do the 2 hits for X, find center, does Y. And it automatically pulls out of the bore when it's done and goes to this Z clearance value. So now I can jog out and go to my next spot without having to manually do it. So that was a pretty basic bore. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's do a diameter, and let's do 12 hits. And if you put these continuous diameter modes or continuous edge modes, it just means it won't turn off this mode after it finishes a cycle. And let's have it record data now to a DXF and a CSV. So I'm going to tell it to do a bore again. It lowers. Now it tells me part rotation is being ignored because it's doing a diameter, so that's fine. I'll show you what not using that, using part rotation looks like in a second. So it's going to start off very similarly to the last bore. Does its 4 hits. Now it's going to start doing the 12 points that we told it to do for a diameter. So now you can see it's doing both XY combinations at the various angles to get 12 total points. And then it auto retracts as we've still got auto raise and lower enabled. Down here in the results, you can see it told us the center position, the diameter, estimate of the roundness, and it tells you the pocket width and height. So let's turn off diameter mode. Let's tell it it's a rectangular pocket, and let's set the rotation at 45 degrees just for fun, just so we can, oops. I'll show you what set part rotation does here in a second. I shouldn't have hit that. So if I do the bore again, now it's going at a 45-degree angle because it's been told that the part is rotated and it's doing a square bore. And so then when it actually finishes and records the geometry to a DXF, it'll draw a rectangular pocket rotated 45 degrees. And there, now because we weren't in diameter mode, it doesn't tell us a diameter roundness, but it still gives you a center position and a width and a height for the pocket. Okay, so let's set this back to 0. Let's move out onto some different geometry. So I'm just jogging over here. I've got a little drill case just set up. Just going to kind of rotate it to some odd angle. and just demonstrate a few other features. So I'm going to jog over. So I've got a new item here. What I want to do is set a new Z. Let's just set this back to 0. So if I hit that again, it turns off, it clears the Z set point, and then if I hit it again, it zeroes the Z axis at the top of my new item. I've still got auto raise and lower enabled. So let's just back off a little bit. So I'm clear. Let's just do a single edge point. I'm going to clear edge mode, just do a single edge. And as you can see, with part rotation set to 0, it made the move completely in just the y-axis. So let's do another edge mode. I've got 2 inches set here. See what happens. Does a first hit. And these arrows, green and gray, number 1 and 2, tell you which points are first and second. So there, after an edge mode, it tells you what the angle that the edge was done at. Delta gives you positions. Now if I hit set part rotation, it pulls the angle from what it just determined and throws it in the part rotation angle. So now if I come back here, roughly to where we started, let's do another edge mode with part rotation enabled. It's going to auto drop. Now it probes in both X and Y at the right angle, and it travels squarely against the edge of the part. But you'll see it's still spitting out an angle here because we haven't rotated the coordinate system of UCCNC. So the part rotation affects how the item is probed, but it doesn't affect the results relative to the axes of UCNC. So let's come back to our start location roughly. And let's set up a G68 rotation just so we can see what that does. So I'm going to set up off this bottom left corner just the same. It's going to do a first hit, and it's going to look just like the edge hit for the first part, but then it's going to come back around and do the corner so that it can set the corner rotation. All these routines are based off of these probe parameters here. So back off clearance is how far it pulls back after doing a hit on the edge. Corner clearance is how far it'll move over and move up between point 1 and 3 in this case. Probe distance is how far, if on the initial probing, will it travel and look for if it hits or misses the item. And then you've got feed. Obviously, you've got the feed for, I'll say, searching at a higher rate. You can set a second feed rate for slow, and let's set that to 2 in this case. And then clearance feed is what feed rate will be when it moves between 1 and 2 and 1 and 3, as those are done as probing moves as well. So let's, and then G68, the edge length, this is defined separately from this edge length, just so that they're not linked to each other. So it'll auto drop, probing, does slow probe because we enabled that speed now. Returns back, now it's going to do the corner. And G68 should be enabled. I think I forgot to allow enabling, so let's rerun that real quick. There we go. So I had forgotten to turn on the function that allows it to go ahead and set G68. So it pops up, it tells you it's done, it rotated the coordinates by the angle. This is basically the same angle we had measured just doing the edge moves before. And as you can see, it shows X and Y red just like UCCNC does to indicate that you're in a rotated coordinate system. So now if we flip back to, say, the edges, let's do an edge mode with 2 inches. If I do this left edge, it'll auto drop, and it now moves in a combined axis movement. And you can see it moved perpendicularly or parallel along with the edge because we've got G68 enabled. So a couple more items we'll probe, and then we'll just look at the output and see what we got. So I've got a couple of slot features in here. I want to get those real quick. So what I can do is let's probe to set a new Z height. So we've got the surface set in a new location. I want to set the depth to about half the diameter of my ball because this is a really thin edge. So what I'm going to do is just hover over basically the center, and let's do a rectangular pocket. I've got auto up down enabled here. And there, it auto up and down goes just to the right height for that pocket because we've reset the surface, told it the right depth to go. I'll just jog over to this other tip, try to eyeball it using the camera. And if you get it wrong, it's no big deal because it's just going to stop the routine if you hit when it shouldn't have. It didn't make it to the depth it was supposed to, so let's try again. There we go. So that's kind of a quick demo of what it's got so far. Let's save off the DXF and see what that looks like. So we'll just call this demo test. Put that away. See if we can find that. Go to UCNC folder, plugins. It's going to put its data in the ProbeIt folder, output, and we just called it demo test, the file we just did. And so this will be raw output. It just came out of saving from the plugin. So you can see we started off doing some stuff in the bore. We recorded a diameter. We recorded it rectangularly. And then we rotated it 45 degrees and re-recorded it. And then we've got this edge here from the corner of the box. So we've got One edge we recorded, we'll have to look at that. That looks like it should have been rotated based on having been done after the G68. So, but that's where it's at. So again, this is ProbeIt for UCNC. It's coming along. So see you guys later. Bye.